Hey guys, it's SRC Reptiles and welcome to the second episode of the Crested Gecko Care Series 2022 edition. So of course, I don't know if any of you guys have watched the first one, but what I'm pretty much going to do is go through all of my old care videos from the past and start to remove them and replace them with newer versions of information that I now know versus back then, so that I'm not also kind of introducing false or incorrect information from a few years back versus now. So if you notice some of my videos disappearing, if you just happen to be looking, that's why. I'm going to be replacing them with newer editions. So anyway, like I said, episode 2, today's topic is temperature and humidity. So real quick before we go over what temperatures and humidity baby crested geckos versus adults need, we'll go over these gauges real quick because it's a fast topic. So Pangea now has a newer kind of humidity and temperature gauge, just like ZoomEd. ZoomEd is the one I will always suggest. I have not tried Pangea's yet. Exoterra also makes a duo thermometer and humidity gauge. So there is 3 different companies that I know of, probably more honestly, that make a gauge like this. I've only had, I believe, one ZoomEd crap out on me, as we're with Pangea's old version. Now this is the old one. I will never suggest this one because it's trash, but it's better than nothing. I will say the temperature on this is somewhat accurate. ZoomEd's is a little bit more accurate. Pangea's is kind of sketch. I will always suggest having like a little digital thermometer, and so this, you just hold a button down and you point it somewhere, it tells you the temperature. So right now the reptile room is sitting at about 75. I don't know if you can see that. It says 75 Fahrenheit. This little thing's pretty nifty. I've had it for I think 3 or so years now, not had to replace the batteries once yet. It's from ZoomEd. It's a really nice little digital point and shoot thermometer pretty much. That's also nice for me to be able to tell the temperature of Raja's mice when I'm heating them up. But anyway, that deal helps me to check and make sure these guys are reading correctly. So this one I've found is more accurate than this old one. Now, I have not tried Pangea's new one. I definitely want to buy one just so I can test it out and see how well it works, but right now they're sold out because I checked on their website. That's also where I saw that Exoterra makes some duo thermometer and hygrometers. So those two are definitely going to be getting tested in the future when I actually am able to get my hands on them. I'm going to set that Pangea one down since this one's the nice one that I'm talking about. Anytime I've had these go out, most of the time it's always the humidity, and normally the thermometer part still will work. Same with the Pangea. Like I said though, I've only had one of these break, as we're with Pangea, I've had like 3 or 4 of them crap out on me. So these guys will run you about $10, maybe $15 depending on where you buy them. Pangea is selling them for $10.99. That's normally where I buy them. There's a few reptile stores that are local to me that have some thermometers from ZoomEd that are yellow. Those are just thermometers. They are not hygrometers. I would always suggest spending your money and getting one of these versus wasting your money and just getting temperature, because humidity is very important. So, because most of the time those temperature ones, they're bright yellow. Like I said, I actually have one on Raja's tank right now. That is to monitor his heat pad though, so not for humidity purposes. He has one of the old Pangea ones, which also the humidity part has broken recently, so he's going to be getting one of these soon. But the local pet stores half the time don't sell these, and if they do, they're more expensive. So if you are wanting one of these, I'd suggest getting them online, whether it be from Amazon or from PangeaReptile.com. Both places sell them. I don't know what Amazon runs though, so it really just depends on what you guys are looking to spend. But with these, when you go to put one in your tank, I'll say this real quick, I almost actually forgot about it. I've had a lot of people comment in the recent past or ask me through like message or email where you're supposed to place the probes for these. I normally will always suggest putting them in the middle of the tank. If you're putting them up at the top or down at the bottom, you're going to get completely different readings depending on where it's at. The middle is a really good spot to keep it. If it's really low on the ground, it's probably going to be a little bit cooler. The humidity might be higher because normally the humidity is higher towards the bottom. As we're at the very top of the tank, you're going to have hotter temperatures, lower humidity. So the middle is a really good area to just kind of get a general idea of what's going on in your tank. So like I said, I'd always suggest placing these in the middle. What I normally will do is I'll place them in the hanging plants that I have in my tank so I don't mess with the suction cups. The geckos are really good about knocking them down from suction cups, whereas if I tangle them in the hanging plants, they normally stay there pretty well. But anyway, enough about these, even though this is important. We'll start to go over what temperature and humidity you want to shoot for based on if you have a baby or an adult. So with baby crested geckos, they need a little bit higher humidity, a little bit higher temperatures, as where adults are more hardy. They don't need as high of temperatures or as high of humidity. They still obviously need it. It's very important, but it doesn't have to be as high because, of course, by the time they're adults, they're more hardy. So with babies, you want to shoot between 60 and 70% during the day, 70 being the higher end. And at night, you want to shoot for about 80 to 100% humidity because at night they're more active. They're more likely to be shedding at night. They're eating in the evening. They're just more active. They need higher humidity during the night. Now, if it's winter time and you're not able to keep it at that humidity, don't feel bad. It's something we all have to deal with. I've made a video in the past. I will link it in the description and in the comments, and I'll put a picture of it on here so you guys can check it out. That talks about how you can help keep your humidity high or help raise your humidity. One thing I'll say, even though I'm pretty sure I mentioned that, also having a humidifier for your house or for the reptile room, wherever it is that you have your reptile, helps a lot to at least maintain that low end of the humidity part. So in your house, you want your house to be about 40 to 60% humidity. You don't want it to be any more humid for yourself. You can cause a lot of health issues that way for your own personal needs. So that obviously works out if you were to keep it at 50%, because normally for an adult crested gecko, that is the base. Now, if you have a baby at 50%, it's not going to hurt them. It's when it gets into that 35 to 30% that you need to start worrying, but that's if it's like that all the time. You don't want it to be dry all the time. You do want to have that humidity when possible, just because that can cause a lot of health issues. I think you can get respiratory infection, I think, when it's really humid, so you don't want it to be too humid all the time. I can't remember. I'll put on the screen what happens if you have it too dry. So there's different health effects if you have it too dry or too humid all the time. So temperature-wise, babies need a little bit higher temperatures. They don't grow as fast if you're keeping them cold. So 72 is normally the base temperature. 70 will be just as fine too, but you just want to shoot for a little bit warmer if possible. I definitely would not go into like the 68-degree range with a baby. Once they hit about a year and a half, probably 68 is not going to harm them. They're a little bit more established by that point. As an adult, they can be resilient against even 65 degrees. I never will personally keep my reptiles below 70. I'm cold when I'm at 68 degrees. I don't even want to imagine how cold they would be at 65. So just personal preference, but I would never suggest keeping them at 65 when they're an adult. They're just going to grow a lot slower. Shedding isn't going to be as often. It just doesn't seem natural for me to keep them that cold. So for adults, you want to shoot for about 40 to 50%, more or less the 50% to 60 in the daytime, and about 80 to 100% as well at night. It's not going to hurt them if it gets down into like the 40%, like I said, but once again, if it gets down to 35 or lower for a long period of time, that could affect them in the long run, so you just want to just kind of keep an eye on that. Temperatures for adults, like I had already talked about, about 68 personally would be the lowest I'd ever do. They can withstand 65, and I want to say 77 would be the maximum temperature even for babies and adults. That across the board, I would not keep it any hotter than 77. It's pretty dangerous if you keep it hotter than that for a long period of time. It can affect them poorly with their health. I personally have never done too much research on it. I've just watched videos with people that have kept crested geckos for a long time, and they have cautioned against keeping it above 78 for a long period. I trust them, so I'm going to also suggest the same. So on the screen up here, I'll have the different temperatures for the babies and stuff, because sometimes I feel like I might have forgotten to mention something. Also, obviously, I will always have notes in my video if I've forgotten and I go back editing and notice I've forgotten to mention something. So I really don't think there's a lot to talk about after that. We've gone over these, and I've gone over like the humidity requirements and the temperature. I will say that, of course, I mentioned the humidity with the video you can watch, and there's also the humidifier that will help raise it. If you're having problems with it being too warm, you can use a window unit if possible. I know not everyone has that option. I'm pretty lucky to have a window unit in my reptile room so that if it gets too warm during the summer, the window unit is actually right over here next to me. So in the summer I use that, and I have it at about 75 is when it kicks on, and it keeps it under 75 degrees. Yes, it can still get to 77 or 78, but with that cool air blowing in here, at least that is offering airflow and it's not stagnant temperatures. Also in the winter, if you happen to be noticing it's just too cold, there are a couple options. I, of course, use an infrared space heater. Yes, my house has heating. Yes, it has air conditioning, but it is not in the correct place for it to actually be able to heat and cool this room properly. So like up there in the corner, you can't see it. There is a air duct, whatever you want to call it. I just call them vents. Apparently they're not actually called vents, but it's in the ceiling. My brain goes to a vent. But whatever you want to call it, it's in the corner. It's in a really bad spot. So when the heat comes out, instead of it being like in the floor, like most vents I'm used to, where heat rises, normally if it comes out of the floor, it has that time to heat up as it goes up. Nah, it just heats up the ceiling and everywhere up here, and the floor is cold. And in the summer, same thing. It's always really cold up here, but down here it's warm. So yeah, having the air conditioning unit in the window and having a space heater for the winter, it really helps a lot. If you don't have the option for a space heater, most of the time you can use a heat bulb if it is a 25-watt reptile safe bulb. And I will use a clamp lamp, which I can show you guys in a second. You want it to be at least 6 inches, if not 8 inches away from the top of that tank. Even at 25 watts, that bulb can get to about 90 because I use that same wattage for my leopard gecko. And it gets to about 88 to 90 degrees when it's 4 inches away from him. So at 6 to 7 or at 6 to 8 inches, you should be perfectly safe. It should be in that 75 to 77 degree range. You don't want to be leaving that on all day. I would probably just have that on during the daytime, and then in the evening turn it off. I mean, if you have to keep them warm, they're just going to have to deal with it, but you don't want to have to run it at night if you can avoid it. I will throw this out there real quick. I would not use a heat mat for a crested gecko. It does not emit heat for the entire tank. It's just a little tiny spot. Unless you have it on a thermostat, that can very easily burn your gecko. It can get way hotter than it needs to be. So if you have a thermostat, then fine. But like I said, that's literally just a little tiny area that it's going to be covering in the tank that's, needs to be an ambient temperature and not just a, I'm going to lay on this to warm up kind of temperature, because then they're not going to be really able to do anything in their tank if they're needing to seek that warmth. So a heat mat, I would not suggest. It's just too risky unless you're going to spend the money and buy a thermostat. They're kind of pricey depending on which one you get. Jumpstart, which is the one I use, which is technically for plants, but it works just fine for the heat mats for reptiles. It's about $35 or $40 now on Amazon. And, they work really well. I've had the oldest one for like 6 years now that I use for my corn snake. Never have had any problems with it. It's just the fact that, of course, he requires it and a crested gecko does not. So, I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. So I'll show you real quick my clamp lamp that I use. So this is my day gecko's tank. As you can see here, it comes with the clamp, which I've got attached to this grate, this extra piece that I have. And that holds the lamp up above the tank, as we're with the UVB bulb that is sitting directly on there, so he can get the most out of that UVB that he can. So I have it at the closest that I can do. Now, of course, in the future, he's going to be getting that bar light bulb type, whatever it's called, because those put off better UVB. But at the time I got him, I just bought the corkscrew one because I wasn't sure if that bar one, if there's a difference between the two. Apparently, the bar one gives off a lot better UVB than the corkscrew, which that's not what we're talking about. So, but I'm just throwing that information out there. But that was my day gecko's tank over there. But just for an example, so you know what a clamp lamp looks like, they cost about $13 or so if you get them from Petco. I always will suggest if you buy anything from Petco, download their app on your phone. You can search stuff and get stuff so much cheaper because they will honor if there is any sort of discount on their website. Now, it has to be actual sale. It can't be if you do a like auto reorder stuff. It can't be through that. But anyway, guys, hopefully you found this video informative. Like I said, it was episode 2. We went over humidity and temperature and the different ways to keep your tanks hot or cold. Hopefully it kind of taught you a thing or two about the humidity and the temperatures. Like and subscribe if you want to support the channel. It always encourages me to make more videos. Thank you so much for watching and have a good rest of your day.